Okay, we're talking today about relationships, specifically why relationships are so important, why building relationships is harder for you as the only one. I'm going to speak to that and what your experience is. But most importantly, today I want to introduce you to what I teach inside Be the First, my progression program for mid to senior level Black lawyers, and it's called Relate Agility. I'm going to talk to you about this Relate Agility, literally a step-by-step process that I've created for you when you join Be the First as a mid to senior level Black lawyer who wants to progress within the industry. I teach you Relate Agility to help you build connection, build those relationships with people who are different to you. And this is a key differentiator. This is so unique, and what you won't find anywhere else is this much focus and attention to the challenges that you face as the only one, right? The challenges you face trying to build connection, trying to build relationships that are so important, aren't they, in your career? So let's start with that. Let's start by talking about why building relationships is so important and why, despite what might feel like a reluctance to do it sometimes on your part, despite the fact that it can feel really exhausting and hard, despite the fact that sometimes actually you don't even want to do it, it is so important. Relationships is so key to your career. I actually describe it as the cornerstone of every career. It's so important. It's worth persevering. It's worth finding a way to get good at it. And it's worth joining Be the First so that you have a step-by-step process. I literally have created it for you. I'll talk more to that in a moment. So first of all then, why building relationships is so important. The first thing I want to think about, where my mind goes to, is how much better your experience of working in this industry will be when you have good relationships. Like the experience of, right? It's hard work. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of some unreasonable demands on you, on your time, the deadlines, the clients, the pressure and stress of needing to get it right. All of those things make for a very demanding profession. And one of the things that really adds light, really alleviates that, really makes it worth it or contributes to why it's worth it to work in this industry, even though it's hard, are the relationships that you build, the fun you can have along the way. I remember as a trainee at Allen & Overy and the ridiculous hours that we used to have to work. And sometimes as a trainee, staying up all night to photocopy people. I don't think you have to do that anymore because that's there isn't the same approach to just churning out loads and loads of paper anymore. It's very different. And documents are marked up, obviously, on devices and on desktops using computers. I know I'm making myself sound ancient, but there was a lot of paperwork. And yeah, sometimes I'd have to stay pretty much all night to either move paper from one box to another or photocopy lots of different documents. This was life as a trainee. In some parts of my training contract at Allen & Overy, that was the reality. And you do start off with a lot of those really mundane, mind-numbing tasks. But do you know what made it all so worth it? The people I got to hang out with, the connections I made, and the laughs we had along the way. So I really wanted to lead with that, about just the sheer amount that it can really elevate your experience as a lawyer is so important. I also think, in addition to the fun you have with the people you work with, there is something that I know certainly was important for me and pretty much every one of you that I have spoken to and I've asked and engaged in a conversation around why you wanted to become a lawyer. Also, if I think about my clients, the things they appreciate about being a lawyer, they recognize and value, is the ability to work with smart people, to be intellectually stimulated and challenged, have interesting conversations. So again, another reason why relationships are so valuable, so beneficial. We haven't even talked about what they'll do for your career yet, but just flagging that the day-to-day experience for you will be better. It will be more fun. It will be more stimulating for you because of the because of the conversations you will be having in those relationships. All right, so let's talk more practically then to your goal of succeeding, thriving in this industry and progressing to the next level. When you have relationships, when you've built relationships around you, what you will then have on tap, instantly available, are the relationships with people who are willing to support you. This is key. It is very difficult, particularly at the level, mid to senior level, when you want to get up into partnership or even get to GC or move into, even if you're moving into another firm or company, it's very difficult to do that without the support of those around you and those more senior to you. I don't want to say it's impossible, but when you think about what is required in order to be accepted into partnership, for example, the vote, like a positive vote from everyone in the partnership, somebody who is going to advocate for you, somebody who's going to campaign for you, right? When somebody disagrees that they need another partner in your team, somebody is able to step in and actually say, no, actually we do, and here's why you're the right person, the perfect person, and why it's essential that you're the one that's made up this year. Yeah, that is an essential requirement of your progression, strategy, right? It's an essential ingredient. You need somebody who's going to advocate for you. So building the relationships, having a relationship with someone who will do that, very useful, very important, actually essential. Another sort of related side to that is the relationship that turns into a mentorship. Now, there's a lot of talk about mentors. Lots of you have mentors. I know some of you have had more success with mentors than others. But what I want to add is the better you are at building relationships, the more people there will be for you to turn to for advice, the more people who will be invested in your success. Okay, so between the sponsors that you're able to attract, the mentors that you are able to bring on board, building a relationship, that is the secret ingredient. That is the magic key. It's not a secret. You already know that. I know that. I'm also sharing it on this. So it's not a secret, but it is the key. It's like the key ingredient. Okay? I don't know where that comes from. Sometimes when I'm doing these sessions, my brain just throws out a random analogy or a random metaphor, and then I mix them all. If you've been listening to me for a while, you'll be used to this by now. So just bear with me and hang in there. Okay, so we've talked about the fun that relationships bring to your career, your experience of being a lawyer. We've talked about the intellectual stimulation of having relationships with people around you who are interesting. It is one of the fun things about being a lawyer. We've talked about the support that you can get, either through a sponsor or through a mentor. So far, so good. But it's not just when it comes to progressing your career that having these relationships is important. I would argue that at least as important are the relationships that you have when something goes wrong. When perhaps you fall out with your boss, or when something is challenged or something comes up, the client brings something. Who knows? There are so many different scenarios where things can go wrong. I see it time and time again. And I also see careers being derailed for this very reason. Something goes wrong, the finger gets pointed at you, and you are left feeling like, what just happened? How am I not being supported here? You look around and there's no one there. Okay? So one of the really important objectives I want you to have in your building relationships, to be strategic about those relationships, is to make sure you have the support that should anything go wrong, there are people who will step in and defend or support or advocate for you. Okay, that's another side to the support that relationships will bring you. How known you are. This is also a benefit. The more relationships you build and the better those relationships, the more people will know you and the more people who will know you, right? And I just think that as a general, from a visibility perspective, is so key. But again, when it comes to progressing, you are going to need to be known. People will want to know who you are. And obviously, if you've built a relationship with people, the more people you have relationships with, the better and wider known you are. And the more they can talk about you in rooms that you don't have access to. So that's really key, becoming or being known. Building relationships is going to give you that too. It affects the work allocation that you get. If you've had the experience of seeing all of your white peers get lots of fantastic work allocation, or even one of your peers from an ethnic minority or other minority group always being given the great work, I bet you that 100% of the time that work is passed down by virtue of a relationship that that person has with the partner involved. Okay? The relationship between two people, what it does is it makes the decision to trust them so much easier. Where there's a relationship, there is typically trust, right? So, and particularly when becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then when you're trusted with something, you do a good job, it builds the relationship, it builds the trust, and that cycle repeats. It's very easy for the partner to just pass work to somebody that they have a relationship with. And often, as you will have seen for sure, that relationship is built on commonality, right? Built on them being very similar to that partner, having had a very similar background, similar culture, okay? But all of those similarities, those points of easy connection, natural, shall we say, connection, what they do is they create a relationship. And so it's the relationship that makes it easy for the partner to allocate the best work to a particular person. Again, a reason for you to take relationship building seriously. If you want to get better at work allocation, look at the relationship. I know in some firms there is a really positive push to be fairer about how work is distributed, and that is great. But do not rely on that. I certainly know for sure that there's been different levels of success with that approach. I want you to have ownership so that you're not waiting and hoping or just expecting to get allocated the best work. By building the relationship, leaning into that, you get to be in control of that. You get to influence it heavily in your favor. The opportunities that come your way, similar point. Work allocation is a bit like an opportunity, isn't it? It's an example of an opportunity to show what you can do, right? But there are other opportunities that come up, opportunities to attend client pitches, to be in front of a client, opportunities to learn or upskill, opportunities to have experience of a particular type of transaction. All of those things are facilitated by the relationship. Your ability to bring in business. Of course, this is so critical if you're at that mid to senior level. And I want to add, also really relevant, at the junior level as well. The sooner you can have this in mind and know the value of the relationships you build with the clients you work for, the value of that long-term bringing in business, like the sooner you're aware of that, the better. So actually it's relevant to all of you, but especially, of course, if you're looking to go into partnership. Bringing in business happens as a direct result of a relationship. The relationship is there. You're then trusted with the work. Remember that trust cycle, right? Relationship, trust, trusted with the work, perform the work. The relationship is strengthened. More work comes in. Yeah. So like building your book of business, bringing business into the firm, growing your book of business, getting new clients, all of that depends on and thrives on the relationships you are able to build. Your ability to delegate. This one is coming up so much inside Be the First right now. So delegation is one of the skills that I teach you. I couldn't find the right word then. It's one of the skills that I teach you inside Be the First. And I give you a fantastic process for delegating. It's not something you're actually taught. So I give you step by step exactly what all of the criteria I want to say, the requirements are for a successful delegation. And one of those requirements is the relationship you build with the person who you delegate to. If you have a great relationship with your team, with your juniors, you will be able to delegate anything to them, right? That's appropriate for their level. Or even if it's a stretch, they would still quite probably be willing to do it for you because of the strength of the relationship you have, right? Obviously, you supervising them in a system, they wouldn't voluntarily want to be just kind of left to sink or swim by themselves. But when you have that relationship, what I'm trying to say is the person you're delegating to is willing to go the extra mile. They might be extremely busy and feel they're at capacity. But for you, be willing to just take on that one extra thing. I've seen this played out so many times. Often where I'm coaching someone on being overwhelmed and having too much to do and taking on too much, which is a different story, a different challenge for them. But for the person who has delegated work to them and they've said yes to, that is a fantastic thing, to have people working for you in your team who are willing to just find a way. They want to do the work for you. They like working with you. They like you. Okay? Contrast that to trying to delegate to people you don't know, have no relationship with you, potentially or possibly there is an absence of a relationship, meaning they don't like or trust you or know you. So there's a kind of distance there. It is extremely difficult to delegate to people in those scenarios. That's when you have to start being much more authoritarian, if you like, a style of delegating, a style of leadership that I know you don't want to replicate, having experienced it for yourself, for sure. Yeah. So building the relationship, having those relationships with your juniors and with your peers too, is going to facilitate your delegation so well. The feedback you receive. This is an interesting one. It's one you may not have thought about. The better, the stronger your relationship with your boss, for example, or even with those, if you have 360 reviews, for example, those who are your peers, those who are more junior to you, the better the relationship, the better the feedback. And what I mean by that is not that they're always going to say great things about you or to you. What it means is they will give you feedback that serves you. You can have, and maybe you've already experienced this, where a partner or somebody in your annual review says, no, you're doing really well, just keep doing what you're doing, no obvious problems, and they kind of give you this sort of sign you off, right? You may have had that experience of a review like that, which is like, okay, great, thank you, don't do anything different, keep doing what you're doing. Thanks for that. But actually what I really would have liked, what would have been really helpful to me, is to hear exactly where you see my area. Like, what do you think I can do better? What's my area of growth? Where am I falling short? And the person you have a relationship with is more likely to be invested in you, invested in your career, invested in your growth, and therefore give you much more useful feedback. Okay, so it's going to enhance that too. The ease with which you can ask for help. This is a big one. I know asking for help isn't necessarily something you love to do. Based on what I see all the time inside Be The First, you don't like asking for help. It's hard to ask for help. And I think sort of culturally within the law firm, within this industry as well, there is a hesitancy or a fear of asking for help because we all want to sound like and seem like we know exactly what we're doing and don't need any help. And I say we because this is something I struggle with in certain arenas still, the asking for help. And I'm working on it too, right? So we're in this journey together. But it's so much easier to ask for help when you've got a relationship with someone. When you know, for example, they're not going to judge you for asking for help, or they're going to be willing to actually give you the help that you need when you ask them. And all of that, the confidence to do that comes from the relationship, as opposed to asking someone you've never met before for help and how you might feel about that. And also how willing they might be to give you that help. I could probably come up with more fantastic reasons why relationships are so important, but I've given you so many already. But I want to just finish on this one, and that is how effectively and efficiently you can do your job. Think about business services, think about tech support, think about all of the people who support you to do what you do. So not the lawyers themselves, not your clients, but actually in the business. I remember this so well, how incredibly valuable it was to me and how much more effective and efficient I was able to be because of the relationships that I built with the overnight secretaries. That's what they were called. There was a whole squad of overnight PAs and secretaries that would just do all of the typing for us. With the guy who delivered the mail, with the security guard, with all of the sort of the hidden faces, it certainly used to be when I was in private practice, all of those people supporting me in my business, I had great relationships with them. And what that meant was, if I needed a document typed up or amended or any changes made, I I knew exactly who I could ask, and they would put me to the front of the queue, or they would stay that extra little bit late to finish something that they knew I desperately needed. So it's just amazing. I want you to also appreciate that when I talk about building relationships, I in no way mean only building relationships with people who are more senior to you, who might be sponsors or mentors or open the door for you to get to the next level. There are so many more people around you with whom building the relationship is going to be so valuable and so just put you at an advantage for sure. Okay, so let's talk now, having listed all of those many reasons why building relationships is so important, is the cornerstone of your career. Let's talk about why it's harder for you. Why it's harder to build relationships when you are the only one. For sure, there are fewer points of commonality, of similarity with everybody around you. And clearly that's going to make the opportunity for connection less obvious. It's going to feel harder. You only need to look at or think about how easy you find it to connect with people who are the same as you. I know a lot of you have either you follow or you've actually attended the Black Council Forum. And one of the most amazing things about the Black Council Forum, so it happens here in the UK, it happens once a year, I believe. Does it happen once a year? I think it happens once a year. Last year was my first one, so I'm only just getting into the rhythm of it. So it happens once a year, and it is the biggest event, all black event for lawyers, like in the legal industry, that certainly I've ever known, and certainly in the country, right? And it's a phenomenal thing to show up there and see all of these black faces, all of these people who look like you, and forming connection there feels so easy. Contrast that to walking into a room and you being the only black face, and you just seeing a sea of white faces, you being the only one. It feels very different, doesn't it? Connecting feels much more challenging. So for sure, the lack of commonality, or the fewer obvious points rather of similarity and commonality, is what makes it harder when you're the only one. Another thing that makes it harder, and it's a problem I hear all the time, is just your feeling, I have nothing in common with them. So it's slightly bigger, slightly different to the lack of obvious points of similarity. It's more actually about the feeling of distance between you and those around you, those people who are different to you. That I have nothing in common, I hear all the time. And what it does is it makes you less likely to investigate, be curious about, and be also open to any of those other ways in which you might be able to connect. So the not having anything in common in terms of how you spend your weekends, for example, maybe even how you spend your evenings, what you do on your holidays and the types of holidays you have, where there's no commonality there, you feel there's no commonality there, that can create a real barrier to connection. And by the way, I will add that sense of a barrier to connection works both ways. So you might feel disconnected or that there's a barrier, but also your white peers might feel that too, might feel self-conscious about that. That might be a barrier for them that they don't necessarily want to or have the energy to try to break down. So for sure, that makes it harder. For example, so in Be the First, recently I was coaching a client on their business development. And he was telling me how he does all the right things. He goes through the motions, he attends the dinners, and he's happy to sit and chat with clients. But actually, he finds it very frustrating when the conversation turns to something informal, something to do with their personal life. He likes to spend his summers back home in I can't remember which part. I can't remember where this particular client was from. Possibly Zimbabwe. I'm not sure, but somewhere back home in Africa for him, where he completely shuts down. There's no Wi-Fi, there's no devices, there's no connectivity, and it's just literally him and his family, and they just shut off from the world and they do nothing for 2 weeks. That for him is heaven. Meanwhile, the client he was talking to has 4 holiday homes and invites loads of friends and has all the family around and stays very connected, literally polar opposites. And so one of the things that this particular client was saying was Yeah, I can do this stuff and I can go through the motions, but I have nothing in common with these people. And here's why that matters. There'll only be a certain level that your relationship can reach, right? When your feeling is and your thought is, I have nothing in common with you. Now that level certainly will get you far. But what will get you to the next level, what will really cement you in your role as the person who can bring in work, build your business, and mean that there's no limit to the amount of business you can build, is your ability to get past that, right? To get past this, what feels like I have nothing in common with them. All right. So in that whole section, I wanted to both acknowledge the fact that will often feel and be very, very true, but also bring you back to the why you want to stay listening to this or watching this session, so that you have the strategy that I'm going to share with you for changing that. Okay, the ease of connections between your white peers. Again, similar but slightly different. So you see your white peers, how easily they're getting on with each other. You see their relationship being played out, but they catch up at the weekends, or the wives know each other, or something like that, right? You see the ease of a connection, maybe at a networking event, how easy it is for your white peers to just walk in and start meeting people that they've never met before. That is really alienating. That can make you feel excluded. That is something that makes you feel isolated, feel alone. I talk about this a lot. I describe it as the environmental imposter syndrome that you experience, feeling like you don't belong because of how easy it is for all your white peers to connect and have all those points of connection, stories and experiences that they have in common. So it can really make you feel isolated. I also want to add that as the only person in the room, or one of very few, networking and building relationships, a normal, natural part of your role and your work, especially as you get more senior, it feels like harder work. Yeah, so we've acknowledged that for your white peers, it might feel easier and that can make you feel isolated and alone. But when you do know you have to engage with those activities, like I can hear so much of the exhaustion. You say to me, it's exhausting. I've got to go to this event, but I find these things exhausting. And it is because you're coming to those events so aware that you're networking with people who are different to you, that you don't have as many points of commonality. You don't have this as much similarity and points of connection. So it can be really exhausting. And what I want to offer, whichever of those experiences you have, any one or all of those, this is totally normal to feel like this when it feels like you're the only one. And I want to add that this would be your experience, regardless of whether it's because of your ethnicity, it might be because of your gender, it could be because of your sexual orientation, your educational background. This actually applies to across the board. And I also want to acknowledge, of course, that the more of those elements that apply to you, so the more you have that cross-sectionality of the minority experience, so for example, being a Black woman who's from a low socioeconomic background, like those 3 points, those cross-sections, that compounds it. That compounds the feeling of isolation. It compounds the feeling that it's really hard and exhausting to connect with people who are similar to you. It compounds the feeling you have nothing in common with them and therefore you can't connect with them. I know how this feels. So some of you who've been following me for a while, you will know that I was the only Black pupil at an all-white school right from the beginning. From the age of 5, I literally had my 6th birthday in an all-white school a month after I joined. And this continued throughout my whole school career and has just been the trend in my professional adult life as well. Being a trainee at Allen Overy and working there for 5 years, then being at Cleary Gottlieb. Even now, I still, even though I focus on supporting Black lawyers to progress in your career, I still find myself time and time again in rooms where I'm the only person of colour. I'm the only one, right? So this is an experience I've had my whole career. I remember being at primary school, my white friends talking about the holidays they went on, talking about Christmas, talking about family activities, none of which I could relate to. I remember at secondary school, my white friends who talked about playing tennis, like that for me felt like such a big thing that I felt excluded from. Had never played tennis. All my kind of friends were like members of this tennis club outside of school, and there would be these tournaments and they'd all come back talking about them after the weekend. Like that was a huge thing for me. And even things like parents' evening, my parents didn't really come to parents' evening. And so that experience that they had that bonded them and talking about it, again, I was outside of that, excluded from that, isolated from that. It felt very lonely. So I understand only too well. And obviously I'd go into the examples from school, but it was a similar situation. Obviously, when I was at Alan Overy, we're talking, how many years ago are we talking? Nearly 20 years ago now, when I first started at Alan Overy. Is it nearly 20? It might even be more than 20 at this stage. So I've had this experience, but here's what I want to tell you, which is so exciting and so important for you. All of that meant I had to learn the skill of building relationships from a very early age. I had to learn to connect with people who were different to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had any friends. I wouldn't have built any relationships. And the fantastic thing is that because I had to learn it from such an early age, I got really good at it. And my ability to build relationships with people who are different to me has been arguably the single most important factor in my success. That ability, that skill. And so what I want to offer to you is all of those reasons why building relationships is so important. If we take that and then we take all of the reasons why it is harder for you as the only one, we take both of those things and I offer you as a solution to bridging the gap between those two things, what I have learned, the experience I have built. And what I've done is I have looked at that, I've literally broken it down into all the steps and I've simplified it into a process that is going to make building connection, building relationships with people different to you so much easier, so that you can actually make this an art form, make this your superpower, have this be the cornerstone of your career that actually propels you forward, because that's how powerful this is. Most of the people who've opened doors for me couldn't have been more different to me. Now, if I learned how to build relationships from the age of 5 with people who are different to me, then so can you. Of course you can. And for sure, I'm not imagining that all of you are starting from scratch here. I imagine that a number of you are already doing that, but for sure there is so much that I can still teach you to take that up to the next level, to elevate that. Remember the client inside Be the First I talked about, who was doing well. He was bringing in business from clients, but he would hit a ceiling because that feeling and that thought, I have nothing in common with them. There's a limit to how much of a relationship we can build. That's the bit I can also help you with, it, even if you believe you're doing this reasonably well. All right. So as I said, I've taken everything I've learned from decades of being the only one in the room and of building relationships with people who are different to me, and using that and being able to leverage that to succeed in a white world. I've broken it down into steps and condensed it into a simple process. And it's going to help you to do exactly the same. So I call it Relate-Agility. This is my name for the art of, this is literally what it means, Relate-Agility, the art of building connection, building relationships with people who are different to you. And it's what I teach you inside Be the First. So when you join, I have a whole process. You'll be able to see what the various steps are, the skills that I teach you. And one of them is this, Relate-Agility. So it means the art of building relationships, making connection with people who are different to you. And there are 5 key steps, 5 elements. I want to talk you through and explain what each of those 5 key elements are. I don't want you to get too caught up or worried in but how do I do that? What's the detail of that? And what do you mean by emotions? Don't worry at all. When you join Be the First, this is exactly what we get into the detail. And I explain every single bit. I'm literally teaching you all of the different elements of these steps. I walk you through it. So here are those 5 steps. Number 1, you want to build your Be the First self-concept. This is a key skill inside Be the First that relates to all of the different skills. It's almost like the glue. It's the I often call it the secret sauce that holds everything together, the secret sauce that catapults you forward in your career, because it takes the strategy, this is what you need to do, and it just lights a fire underneath it, right? It creates an exponential effect, because what it means is you are following that strategy, you are taking action from the self-concept of, I'm not the only one in the room, I'm the first. So from a very elevated way of thinking about yourself, a very elevated way of showing up in your life as well, like more broadly, of showing up in your career, showing up to your work, showing up to your relationships. Yeah. So what that does in this specific part of the coaching I give you in relation to Relate-Agility is it focuses on how you have to think about relationships and connection, and about your ability to connect with people who are different to you, that stops you feeling like the only one, stops you feeling isolated and disconnected, and actually creates the result of you being the first, being someone who can include yourself with anyone, in any room, connect with anyone. So there's a whole self-concept way of thinking about yourself, a whole level of confidence that is step one, the critical step one, that I teach you to access as part of Relate-Agility. Step 2, the second bit, is the 5 connecting emotions. There are 5 emotions that you need to feel to get really good at connecting with people who are different to you. And I talk you through what those are, and I explain exactly how you can access those emotions, generate those emotions yourself in order to be in the right kind of emotional state when you're speaking to someone. I won't talk through what each of those emotions are. I will just give you a couple of examples. I will just talk you through a couple of them. They're not examples, they're the actual emotions. One of those is curiosity. It's very important, if you're going to build relationships with people who are different to you, that you be actually curious about them. Be curious about them. Have that interest in them. That is an absolute essential. If you are going out networking, you are entering into conversation with someone, you want to build a relationship with them, that cannot happen without your interest, without any curiosity on your part about who they are. So that's an example. So in the program, when you join, what I do is I teach you to create the feeling of curiosity in you. I literally have a strategy, a process for that I give you that helps you do that, so that the next time you go out and networking, you can just turn that on. You can access the curiosity and be interested in the person in front of you. All right. A second example I'll give you, which is the sort of flip side, but it might really ignite more curiosity for you, but also see why emotions are so important. And the second example I want to give you is it's the emotion of being sufficient, of feeling sufficient in yourself. What that means is when you enter into a conversation with somebody, you've met them for the first time, or you know them and you're aware that you're very different, they are different to you, you don't have any obvious points of commonality. What is really required is you feel sufficient in yourself, confident enough in who you are, that you are not entering into that conversation expecting them to make you feel good about yourself. And I'm laughing because it's something that we do without realizing we do it. It's actually quite a very human thing to do. So think about what we want from the conversation, what we want from the relationship. Sometimes that's really obvious, like the person who speaks to you and they're a bit like, they clearly just want like either some information out of you or they want something from you. Like there's that kind of really more obvious and explicit way that people will engage that isn't great either. Don't do that. That is not a way to build relationships, by going into a conversation thinking about what you want to get out of it, what you want that person to do for you. Definitely don't do that. I talk to that inside the program as well as part of Relate-Agility. But there's also the hidden agenda that we have, a hidden agenda that other person will be interested in us, that they will validate us, that they will that perhaps even praise us, okay, give us positive feedback about something, the hidden agenda that we bring to so many conversations. So being sufficient in yourself, That is a very important emotion to bring to a conversation with someone who you have nothing in common with. So you're starting to get the idea of what that means, the 5 emotions. The third step is to create opportunities for connection. Yeah, that means just thinking really strategically. A very simple example of that is, there's an event coming up. Like, why not reach out to someone beforehand and actually create the opportunity to connect with them at that event by giving them a heads up and saying, I can't wait to meet you. That's a really obvious example. Okay, but there are lots of other ways that I teach you inside Be the First about how you can create the opportunity to connect with somebody. And that can be so easily done. It can be done with advanced preparation, as in that example, or it can be done in the moment. And I speak to that too. All of this you learn in the program. The fourth step, it sounds really obvious. It's connected to the emotion of needing to be curious, for sure. But this is something in its own right. And the step is literally your actions, the work you do to get to know them. Okay? So it's beyond just being curious about who they are and what they're about. It's like getting to know them as a person, as a human being. And then the fifth step and the final step is letting them know you. Yes, letting them know you, being willing to share parts of you, being willing to share those parts of you which are different to the equivalent parts of them. Again, referring to the example of the partner, not the partner, the client who was on the partnership track, who was talking about how different their summer holiday is to their client's summer holiday. And what is absolutely essential is a willingness to let the client know, like, why that's different, why that is something that, in that particular client's case, why it was something that he was really proud of, that he really loved, that he really looked forward to, that he really valued. So a desire, a willingness to let them know you is absolutely key when it comes to building relationships with people who are different to you. So there you have it. I've outlined those 5 steps for you so you know exactly what they are, but you don't have to worry about all the ins and outs of how you actually do that, because I will teach you when you join Be the First. So if you are mid to senior level Black lawyer and you are looking to progress within the industry, you want to progress to the next level of seniority, so you want to be partner or counsel, or you want to progress to just a level of ease within your experience of being a lawyer. That could mean more balance, it could mean just getting more recognition, it could be more confidence, whatever it is that you want at that level, this new level. I want to encourage you, I want to invite you to join Be the First. All right. So I've been through, what have we covered today? We've covered the reasons why building relationships is so important. We've covered why it is harder for you as the only one in the room. And I've explained to you, I've introduced you to Relate-Agility. This is my unique process. You won't find it anywhere else. I created this on the back of my decades of experience of building relationships that have been instrumental in creating the success in my career. And I'm using that, I've synthesized it down to give you the process, exactly what you need to achieve that too. And the results, I don't need to go into, to convince you of all of the benefits you'll have when you learn Relate-Agility, when this becomes a skill you can take with you at every single level. All of those reasons why I said building relationships is really important, all of those reasons are going to be the results that you create for yourself. The experience of being a lawyer being more fun, more intellectually stimulating and challenging and enjoyable for you. It's the support that you will get to progress, whether from a sponsor, whether it's getting buy-in for an idea, whether it's from a mentor. The support you will get should anything go wrong. Really important. You are going to have the relationships that also mean you get some great work allocation. You get some great opportunities that come your way. You are able to bring in more business. This is so key. The higher you get, the more important that is, the more that is valued. It's going to mean that delegating for you is so much easier. You're going to get more useful feedback from people who are invested in you, invested in your growth, and willing to tell you what you need to hear in order to progress to that next level. It's going to impact the ease with which you can ask for help. Like, imagine having so many great relationships that it means when you need help, you know exactly who to ask, and you know, based on the strength of your relationship, that they're going to be willing to help you. And then finally, it's going to impact how easily and how effectively, how efficiently you are able to do your job. Think about all of the support services around you, the business services. Like, imagine if you've got relationships with people there, how much they are going to facilitate you in your work. So there are so many reasons, so many benefits, so many results waiting for you when you join Be the First. I teach you related agility and you implement what I learned. It will blow up your career, I promise you. It is such a powerful skill to have, to be able to walk into any room and speak to and connect with anyone. All right. So if you have any questions about related agility, about building relationships with people who are different to you, feel free to reach out to me. You can message me. You can literally email me. Caroline@carolineflanagan.com, or better still, just DM me on social media. Make sure you're following me on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram. I'm also on YouTube, where you'll see my shorts and my videos. So I'm on as many of the platforms as possible. You can find me everywhere. So please don't hesitate to reach out with your questions. Remember, I have been where you are now, where this has felt really, really challenging. And what I want more than anything is to take what I have experienced and what I have learned over all of these years, and I want to make it really, really easy for you to excel in this area and have this skill that will serve you in your career and actually in your life out in the real world as well, will bring you so many benefits. So if you are a mid to senior level Black lawyer, I want to invite you to join Be the First. What I recommend you do is you click on the link in the notes below, either this in the show notes if you're listening to the podcast, or if you're reading a post, click on the notes here. Well, however you're consuming this information, there will be a link to book and have a call with me. Let's talk about where you are in your career. Let's talk about where you may be getting stuck with relationships and how Relate Agility can help you, and what the next steps might be for you in terms of joining the program. All right, that's it from me this week. It's been a pleasure. I'm so passionate about this subject. I love the transformation that Relate Agility is creating inside Be the First, and I can't wait to welcome you inside the program too. That's it from me for now. I'll speak to you next week. Bye for now.